This is an AJ Duggar exclusive.
This is AJ Duggar talking to Mr. John Cameron. And John, he wrote this amazing book on Rocky Marciano called Redemption, The Life and Death of Rocky Marciano, correct?
That's right.
Okay, but before we get into the book, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, there's not really much to say about myself, really. I'm just somebody who was a fan of the Rocky Marciano from when I was a kid, and just wanted to write the story of him, really. Not much really up myself, I'm just myself, really.
Okay, I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of Rocky Marciano myself, and I like how he was really aggressive in the ring, but he was like a lovable squirrel outside the ring. You know, because I remember, he said, he was like, I beat a great champion in Jersey Joe Walcott. I only hope I can be just as good a champion as he was. He was such a lovable, nice guy, you know?
It was a good impression.
Thanks. Okay, now, what inspired you to work on a Rocky Marciano biography?
Well, when I was a child, I was a boxer myself. Back in the day, it was Marvin Hagler was the champion. And my father, sadly passed away not long ago, he used to tell me stories about Rocky. Rocky was a champion when my dad was in the army back in the 50s. And the story he told me, I mean, my father was a very down-to-earth man, you know? And he didn't really look up to anyone. But the stories, when he told me about Rocky, you just seeing that look in his eye, and I thought, this guy's something else, isn't he? So I started basically just doing a little, not really research, but I bought biography, Everett M. Skian's biography. I bought that one, read that one, and then as time progressed, I just wanted to learn more and more. And a few years ago, I kind of thought to myself, well, there's got to be more to the story than this. There's got to be a lot more. It didn't say anything about his army career, about how he became a boxer or anything. So I kind of thought to myself, well, let's kind of look into it a bit deeper. I had a bit of time on my hands at the time, so I started looking into it and seeing what I could do, and started finding out some of the facts that weren't being shared, which was very interesting. The more I've learned, the more I've sort of admired the guy, really.
Okay. So, who did you interview for the book, and how long did it take you to put it all together?
The first volume, which, as you know, follows him from when he was born up to 1949, took me from the start. It's all a new process for me, so it was putting it all together. It took me about nearly 3 years to actually get it all from the first word right up to where it was published. I've been quite lucky, really. I spoke to Peter Marciano a few years ago, Rocky's youngest brother, and he helped me out with the first initial draft, but when he saw that there were some things that were happening that he didn't quite tie in with his version of events, he pulled out of it a little bit. Rocky's son, being a very big sponsor of the book, he'd always be behind it, but again, he's a bit reticent about what he says and what he doesn't say. But people like Phil Gorani, who wrote the afterword for the book, he wrote a book with Rocky Marciano, and he shared very, very fascinating stories with Rocky. Hank Cisco, former middleweight boxer, he was under the tutelage of Al Wild and Charlie Goldman before Rocky came along, and he was at Rocky's training camp. He knew Rocky personally. Various people like that, really. People that knew him in the army, who don't want their names mentioned for various reasons, I suppose. There's actually a lot of people that I've come across who were willing to speak, but didn't want their name mentioned because they didn't want to be sitting to be tarnishing the story that a lot of people know about Rocky Marciano. Because there's a certain image of Rocky, and it's almost a glorified image, but there's people who want to tell the real story, but don't want to rock the boat, you know what I mean? So it's made it quite difficult to actually get to some of the people I really needed to speak to. But it's been a struggle, I've got to admit, but it's all come good in the end.
Yeah, and you mentioned Rocky's stint in the Army, and I know a lot of the other books written about Rocky, they look over his military career and his amateur career for the most part. Is there a reason for this?
Well, I thought there had to be some kind of reason because, I mentioned the Everett M. Skian book. It's one of the most detailed accounts that I've read up to the time. And they mention his old army career is covered in about a paragraph, I think. And most of the biographies, if not all the biographies, really very rarely mention anything about Rocky's army career. Even Rocky himself, he doesn't really talk about it. He'll mention about his fight in Swansea in Win Street, where he knocked out an Australian serviceman who found out I think he said he was physically well built as Primo Chimera, so he knew he had to get the first punch in because he thought he was going to be in trouble. He knocked the guy out with one punch, was all he needed. But made me think, well, perhaps was Rocky fighting back then? What was he doing? What was his army career not being mentioned? So I put the figure in, and I managed to find out some quite interesting stuff, which is covered in the book, as anyone who will read it will find out.
Awesome. And I read about this in the book, and one of the things that makes your book special is that, you know, you go in great detail on Rocky's loss as an amateur to Coley Wallace. What happened in that loss?
Basically, Coley Wallace himself always maintained that it was a pretty one-sided fight and that he beat Rocky all over the place, knocked him down a couple of times, done this, done that, and always regretted that they never met in the professional ring, because Coley Wallace turned professional not long after he actually beat Marciano. I think he was in the New York Championships in 1947. But when I started doing the research and started digging up, I got the newspaper reports and everything, and it turned out that Rocky Marciano was actually robbed in that fight. And although there was a massive size difference, pictures of the actual fight, if you ever get to see him, Coley Wallace is probably about 3 or 4 inches taller than Rocky. And one of the newspaper accounts said it was like a pod carrier throwing up bricks to try and hit him in the face, and just couldn't reach him. But essentially, Rocky pretty much he dominated the fight, or dominated the first 2 rounds. The third round was a bit sort of here and there, could have gone either way in the third round. But at the end, Rocky himself recalled that even Coley Wallace's handlers threw a towel at him in disgust at Coley Wallace because they knew he lost. Everyone thought he lost. But the interesting thing is, in the newspapers at the top, when they were touting Coley Wallace and when they were saying about the New York tournament, they were already saying before Coley even stepped into the ring for his first fight that watch Coley Wallace be crowned the New York champion. So the papers expected him to win. So everyone kind of thought it was a bit of a hometown decision, and they didn't want their boy to lose in the first round, especially to this Rocky Marciano, who was then. A lot of people didn't really rate him as an amateur. A lot of the, especially in Lowell, he was fighting in Lowell, which is where he sort of made his name for the amateur. The Lowell fans didn't like him. They just thought he was a lucky one-punch fighter. Until he fought Coley Wallace, and everyone kind of realised, hang on a minute, this guy's got something a little bit special. So that was a real turning point for Rocky right there and then. Fight he should have won, really. Should have, it was his.
Interesting. Yeah, because there's so many conflicting stories about that, so I'm glad that you wrote this book to clear that stuff up. And speaking of Rocky, let's talk about his strength and conditioning, because he was only maybe 185, 187 pounds, but he had freakish heavyweight power. And he was tough enough to beat anybody or knock out anybody. So how was Rocky so strong for such a little guy?
You know, if I could answer that, and I knew what that really was, I could bottle it and I could sell it for a lot of money. Because Rocky was really exceptional. It was a one-off, complete one-off. He had he always put his power down to his tree trunk legs. He had really, really thick legs for a little guy. And he was smaller, actually, than a lot of people think. His official height was put down as about 5'10", 5'11", but he was actually only about 5'9". There's a lot of people who saw him at the time all said, no, he is short. He was a lot shorter than people gave him credit for. He was very stocky, even though he was only 13 and a half stone, very wide, very, very wide back. But he was a lot smaller than people say. His fighting weight varied between 179 and about 195 was the biggest he ever weighed. But a lot of people actually said that when he was in the gym training, he was actually at his most powerful, which is quite a scary thought. He was at his most powerful when he was about 201, 203. But they trained him down to about 180, 185, because they liked their fighters back then to be leaner, and it was more about endurance and sort of about being big guys like they are nowadays. So where his power came from, it was a natural thing. It was Rocky. He had it. He couldn't throw a ball to save his life. He didn't make it in the baseball because he didn't have a strong enough or a powerful enough throw, which is pretty remarkable, really. But where his power came from, somewhere up above. I don't know.
Yeah, he was special that way. And I was going to ask you about that also, because, you know, today's athletes are obsessed with weightlifting and bulking up. So if Rocky was fighting today, do you think with him, you know, if he lifted weights and bulked up, you know, would that affect his style? Would it slow him down? Like, how do you think that would work out today?
If he was around today, I suppose I had this conversation with Phil Guarneri, as I mentioned his name earlier, and he said, in all honesty, he believes that if Rocky was around today, he probably wouldn't lift weights because it would have affected his punching power. It probably would have definitely would have affected his stamina. I think he wouldn't have been able to go as long. But then he didn't really need to do that often. But Rocky was a sort of guy, as I said earlier, he was more comfortable at a natural weight of around 201, 202 pounds. Which would have been big enough, really, today. Mike Tyson was 215 in his prime. He was about an inch taller or so. So if Rocky was around today, I think he would have been a natural heavyweight. He wouldn't have trained down quite so. He didn't like weights. He stayed away from weights as often as he could. And to be honest with I think he would have been more like Muhammad Ali. He would have bulked out more naturally by not doing weights. He's doing calisthenics and stuff. Trained as hard. He's the only person today, I suppose, or recently, is Evander Holyfield for the training style, but Rocky, I think, would have probably stayed away from the weight. I think he felt it would have affected him.
It's interesting. And so Rocky, he almost killed Carmine Vingo early in his career. Like, he literally knocked him into a coma. So tell us about that fight. I heard it was a really big fight when it happened.
It was. That was another turning point in Rocky, where we had quite a few turning points. Carmine Vingo, one as a professional, was the most noticeable, even though there were a couple earlier when we fought guys called Bobby Quinn and Eddie Ross, and they were two highly touted professionals. And when Rocky defeated those in 1948, that was a big stepping stone to realising that he was the professional who could actually make something of his career. And the Carmine Vingo fight, again, it was a big headline, the second headlining fight in Madison Square Garden. And he was fighting Vingo, who again was a very highly touted heavyweight. He was already being mentioned as one of the top 5 potentials to go on to become heavyweight contender and perhaps a future heavyweight champion. And it was, I believe it was Carmine Vingo's 20th birthday, I think, when they actually fought. And his wife had cooked him a cake and had a cake ready for him at home, but of course he never came back for it. But there's a lot of stories about that fight that were told about how when Carmine was knocked out, he was carried from the ring in a makeshift stretcher, basically in overcoats and stuff. Pictures of the fight show that he wasn't. A lot of Rocky's fights and a lot of stories about Rocky. There's a bit of mythologizing going on, and there's stories that are being told that didn't happen. And you go back into the newspaper accounts and you go back into the actual photographs, and you go right there and then, and you see that the stories don't quite match up. But that did affect Rocky. It did affect him a lot, but it didn't affect him as much as a lot of people say it did, especially when they talk about how he fought 3 months until he fought Roland Estarza after that. A lot of people don't realise is Rocky actually had a couple of fights lined up in between the Vingo and the Estarza fight, which never happened. It didn't come off. Another time he was supposed to fight Roland Estarza in February. It didn't come off because the Estarza had a cut. And referring back to the Carmine Vingo and how Marciano felt, yes, he did feel very, very bad. But when Peter Marciano was still on board and talking about it, he said that he didn't believe that Rocky would have given up if anything had happened to Carmine, because Rocky was a fighter, pure and simple, and he knew the risks, and he knew it could happen to him, and Rocky actually said to his father once when he was a lot younger and he was fighting in the streets, and he was a bit of a street ball for him to take. He said he was really worried that one day he could hit somebody and he could actually kill them, and it almost came to pass with Carmine Vingo. But it didn't. So he didn't he was going in there to do. He knew it could happen to him, and he knew he could do it to somebody else. So yes, it did affect him, but it didn't affect him as much as a lot of people have made out it has. And there's actually some stories about what happened between Rocky and Tom, and they remained very good friends for the rest of Rocky's life. Some of the stories about certain people's generosity didn't quite tie up. That'll be covered in the second volume. I've got some interesting articles from Carmine himself from the last time he was heard of, which was in the 1970s. And he was working as a security guard, and he still had a limb, which is a throwback to the Marciano fight. And he spoke very glowingly of Rocky, but it wasn't quite his recollections of what happened after the fight weren't quite what was being written in biography since. So that'll be an interesting read when that comes up.
Okay. And how's Carmine doing today? For the most part, I haven't heard much from him.
I'll try to track him down. There was a Carmine Vingo that I tried to get hold of in New York. I believe it's the same one, but he never got back to me. I think he probably was only about 2, maybe 3 of Rocky's opponents that are still alive. And Carmine Vingo, I believe, is still one of them. But as I say, the last that was ever heard of, and the last he ever spoke about publicly, was back in the 1970s. He hasn't spoken about anything since.
Okay. I don't want to hold you too much long. I got 2 more questions. Now,
carry on. All the time you need.
Okay. I know Rocky used to idolize Joe Louis and a lot of other black heavyweights, and a lot of people consider Rocky to be a great white hope, but I never heard Rocky discuss this. And I know he fought during the 40s and 50s, the time of racial divide in America, but Rocky didn't appear to be racist, So was this because he witnessed the hardships of his family being Italian immigrants, or what was his stance on things like that?
There wasn't a racist bone in Rocky's body, that I believe absolutely 100%, and it probably was to do with the fact that being an Italian American, he'd also lived through the same sort of hardship as everyone else, or the other immigrants or all the other sort of citizens that were seen at the time as being below others. He lived through that, he'd seen all of that. There was a famous story about when he was playing baseball, and there was a black baseball player was being berated by some white baseball players. Rocky walked over to the white guy, slapped one in the nose and broke his nose and said, "Don't you ever say things like that in front of me again." So I don't think Rocky even saw colour as skin or anything like that. The guy was just a guy, and the opponent was just an opponent, the friend was just a friend. I was Rocky Marciano. He was a great guy. He really was somebody who everyone should have aspired to have an older brother like Rocky Marciano. He was your friend, you had it made. Didn't matter who you were.
Awesome. Yeah, he was a great guy. Definitely, I respect him for that. And so, what's in store for the next volume?
So the next volume will take us through, starting from Rolling the Stars fight in 1950, and it will take us through to basically the championship fight in 1952. I'm going to try and follow the same sort of routine that I did in the first volume, where I take each opponent and I do a bit on their life as well, and try and put them back from just being basically just footnotes, because each of them had their own life, they've done their own things. I think everyone should be remembered. I think Rocky would like it, because Rocky stayed friends with a lot of his own opponents. He used to meet up with them, go fishing with them, hang out with them, basically. So I think he would have liked it that those who fought more sort of remembered a bit more than just being KO. So the next one, will take us look through a little in depth into how he rose through the championship rankings. Take a look at Joe Louis's comeback, what he was being touted as the new big thing before Joe Louis came back. When Louis came back, Rocky Marciano was kind of given the job, built up in order to take Joe Louis out. So there was that meeting that's going to be really looked into quite deeply about how Rocky was becoming king, and he had to dispose of the new king, and then moving on to become the champion of the world.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about Rocky that you want to put out there for his fans?
Well, anyone who's a fan of Rocky Marciano already, they know Rocky Marciano was a great guy. Was he the greatest heavyweight of all time? In my opinion, absolutely. Other people have their own opinions, but you just have to remember that You know, all the disadvantages he had, physical and mental, just everything. He just fought against everything. And he should be somebody that everybody, whether you're a boxer or whether you're in sports or whether you're just any career that you want to do, if you really believe you can do it, then you can do it. No matter what disadvantages you may have, if you believe it, you're going to do it. Rocky Marciano could become the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. I can't achieve anything, can you? That should be his greatest effort.
Yeah, man. That's why whenever people tell me Rocky Marciano is the greatest of all time, I never argue with them, because it takes a lot to be undefeated in any era. You know, you can have a luck. You need luck. You need the judges could screw you over. It's just so much that works against you. So to be undefeated, that says a lot. And I respect Rocky for being a clutch fighter. Whenever he needed that emergency knockout, he always got it. Like against Ezra Charles and against Joe Walcott. So I definitely respect him in that sense.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. He certainly knew how to put on a good show. Certainly knew how. If Arturo Gatti was a heavyweight, I think he'd have probably been the closest thing to Rocky Marciano we've seen since. Rocky was just a remarkable person. He was my hero. I don't mind admitting it. He was my hero, and everything that I found out, it's all added to his legend. Really, it's made him more of a human being. And when you realise that the guy was human, he was just like you and me, just like everyone listening, just like anyone who's going to read the book, hopefully. He was just a human. When you realise he was a human, you realise, wow, he's unbelievable.
Cool. All right, everybody, this is John Cameron, the author of the book, Redemption, The Life and Death of Rocky Marciano. Man, it's been great talking to you. We got to do this again sometime.
We will do it again sometime. Don't worry about that. Now we've booked up, we definitely will, AJ. No problem, man.
All right, cool.
This is an AJ Duggar exclusive.